Hello Liz, thanks for connecting and a nice chat in the general. Okay, now it is working finally. Alright, so welcome back. If you're still around on Twitch and YouTube, which one of you was, thanks for letting me know that this was frozen. I have now cleared the environment of extra noise, and I've also hopefully changed my encoding for this system. So welcome to the Q&A&Critique number 74. It is now 2012. Pretty much if we were starting at 15 past, we're right on time. So let's just pretend it is. So today is the first episode of this year, which is kind of exciting for me because this year is the year 2023 and there is a lot to come. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. So we have a couple of art pieces submitted by Slink and Plebes. Thank you for your submissions. We're going to be taking a look at your art first and foremost. But to give you a quick summary, we're going to be taking a look at what is in store for 2023 after the art review. If you have art that you'd like me to take a look at in the future, in live here, share it with other people, maybe get some constructive criticism if you need it, or if you just want to share your techniques and be the star of the show, let me know and send your art into the chat. And other than that, the other things that we're going to be taking a look at, if we have time, is also the foundations of geometry nodes. I have been starting to take a look at it, which means I'm working on a library for Bforaritsts and understanding it in a more of a fundamental way. So I have a couple of fundamental core concepts that I like to share with a blend file. And then from there, we'll take a look at technology, software, what's coming to Blender, what's coming to Bforaritsts, and the future of the 2023's art tech scene. This is a slightly half-investigated personal opinion type of a presentation, but we'll go through that later. So without further ado, let's begin. So, Plebes, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Pretty good. So I have your portfolio here that you have loaded onto Blender Artists, and you actually have got a couple of questions with this. One of the questions that you have is, how is the quality of your portfolio? The formatting, the text-to-image balance, and is there anything that you can add, remove? What could be improved? So I want to ask you the return question. What is the context of your portfolio? What is it for? Why do you want me to take a look at it?
Well, there's one post, which is it about? It's like one entry, and currently I'm since a while still in the process of putting my portfolio together, and for that I use Blender Artist as like a draft until I can make a site. And my portfolio is going to be for vegetation artist or foliage artist, organic environment artist, however it's called, mainly making plants in 3D. And yeah, so I want to have different entries showcasing different plants or groups of assets I made, and this is going to be the entry for Game Assets 2022.
Wow. So far, I quite like the presentations that you have in the entire project.
Yeah, I'll say from like someone who doesn't know much, it looks very nice.
Yes, I agree. So your goal is clear, to find a position with environment art, and you're working through the showcase of the different pieces. I'm going to give you a like for this. That's good. It's going to take me a while to digest through all the content, but the first images that I see of your art, of your showcase, I think is fairly good as a summary. Same with your asset packs and things like this. If you're applying for like your low poly and textured materials and things like that for this particular project, I think you'd be quite good. Then it comes to your headers with your next project and things like this. I think is very good. So typically when it comes to a portfolio, you have a summary of your general who you are, what you do, and why you do it. And then from there, you go into your experience, and you might have a list of projects or a list of things that you have worked on nice and quickly. And then you'd go through each project in detail. So it's kind of like you have a top-down view, so that somebody who has very little time gets attracted to what you're doing. So you have like a banner or something at the top, a quick summary of all your work, and then you would have the summary of who you are, top-down. And then from there you go into like this general summary of what your projects are, a whole list of them, best ones that you have, a quick little outline, and then you go into the details. So here you've got your details in your project in a linear way, which I think is really good. If people really want to get down into the things that you're doing, your techniques, you've done well. I think the only thing that's missing is the top-down summary at the top to capture me. But other than that, I think it's really cool. So my next question for you is, what do you plan to do to convert this to the website, or to ArtStation, or to another concept?
My general plan after going through the different options is going to be Google Sites. So I think I might just take what I get. But in general, yeah, this is like just a part of it. So it would be nice to have it like a collapsible gallery or on the side as just one picture, and you click it and then you get to more
the details.
posts.
Yeah, which is an ArtStation style. There's also on the ArtStation they have a good format of like how to make like a presentable online CV, which I think is a very good way. I've known many friends who've used this format and they've gotten their jobs. That's another thing to take a look in or use for duplicating. And also jobs overseas, so they got their flights, they got their papers, they had their employment, paid for their immigration for the time of their jobs overseas. I recommend that, if you can. But very nice, I love your work, by the way. I've been working with you on a daily habit. Like if you guys remember 2 weeks ago, nearly 3 weeks ago, we talked about making habits, atomic habits. We talked about the New Year's plans and making ambitions. So I've been here with Plebs. We've been connecting in the afternoon for half an hour, working on different projects. And some of these trees you've been working on, these plants here, for example, you've been modeling a couple of these every session, correct?
More in the style of the locally stylized ones.
These ones.
Yeah. Because I think that's really relaxing. We talked on that earlier in another Q&A, and it's a really nice task for a little habit.
It is a fun task, and it is very productive to make these plants very quickly with the UV technique that we walked through. So how are you feeling about creating the new habits over the new year? Do you feel like it's moving on well? Is it working for you?
Pretty well. I made a lot of assets in this time. I don't know how much days it was, but I think I have like 15 assets now. So I think within a month I have a little asset pack, which is exactly my goal, and it's working. It's a good thing to have those habits. I think I've chosen a fitting task for it.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear this, actually. So Slink, you also submitted a piece of art today, and thanks please for putting this out there. I think you have huge potential with your art. I also would love, like, I know with your other work that you've done, you've also done some realistic pieces as well, not just the low poly art. Do you think maybe showing your range of foliage and environment work will add to your goals of actually landing a position in this particular ambition to find a job?
Yeah, for sure. Like this is definitely just supposed to be one little piece of the portfolio. The whole draft is like if we would go onto my portfolio on Blender Artist, this is kind of what it's getting to be soon, I hope.
Yes, you're creating quite a collection of art.
Yeah, so I hope that there's something. I mean, I'm gonna choose the best one of it and condense it down to something really curated. But yeah,
That's right. Yeah, there's typically it's a good thing to keep your. Sometimes quantity is not important. Maybe for a productive person who wants somebody who's very productive, yes. But sometimes it's the best of your best is what's important, which is advice that people have told me before. So, all right, let's move on with Slink. So thanks, plebes. And we'll move on to the next piece that has been submitted today. So Slink, he has given us a couple of pieces here before. So what have you brought to the table today? What do we have? Something suspicious.
Among Us.
Among Us.
Yes.
All right. So tell me about this piece. How did you do it?
Like, I tried to mold a beer. Mold something. Yeah. Again, and it has like notes now, and I was like, yes, now it's time. Time to make some cool stuff with it. And I quickly modeled like Among Us.
Great.
And gave it like some very, very funny looking outlines.
Oh, that's good. So beer and malt, what is beer and malt for Blender?
Mold, like if I understand correctly, from what I've been told, mold is the rendering engine and the beer is the UI part of it and the integration to Blender. And like beer's like an Mpr renderer, like non-photorealistic renderer to get
Good.
like anime, cartoon, or other styles of non-photorealistic rendering. And
All right.
I used it to make a mouse.
So I guess this is an alternative to using Eevee for these types of things.
Yes.
Excellent. I'm
And I
gonna.
genuinely think the outline is way better than you do with like Solidify, Fresnel, or whatever there is.
Oh, that's cool. I think I met one of the developers for the system. He also added a real-time compositor with render buffers and different things like that. He also added the ability to do other techniques. It's not as efficient as Eevee, but it does give you very good MPR results.
It is based on an older version of what was it again?
The older version of
Of the GPU API, not Vulkan. What was it again?
OpenGL?
Ah yes, OpenGL 4 point something was it?
Oh, right, okay.
And we are like on 5 point already.
That's true. Which actually is a good comment to talk about concerning what's happening with Blender in the future. So I'm going to share a quick little link that Blender just released this past week, which is basically something about their plans for this coming year, which is also kind of exciting because it also goes to Bforaritsts and also kind of affects everybody and how we work and how we do art. So the things that we've got to look forward to this year is Among Us. Yes, that's right. is basically Vulkan in Metal, which is the API for the system of Eevee. And Eevee's getting a big upgrade. Is they're focusing on getting this sorted this year, which means screen space, global illumination, possibility of faster shaders and lighting, and also more interactive iterations of different types of stuff. So Eevee's getting an upgrade, and the backend code is getting an upgrade because OpenGL is being phased out. It is no longer really supported, and Vulkan is the alternative. It's like OpenGL 2.0. So that opens doors to many things. Maybe in the future, 2024, we'll also get GPU-based ray tracing on a raster engine, or even tessellation or other things like that. Eevee will also get displacement and other vector displacement based on tessellated meshes, which is kind of interesting. And we also get a new Pbr Principled Material, which has better subsurface scattering controls, a lot more simpler, and better sheen and other attributes like this. Now, on top of that, right now we also have the ability to use a real-time compositor, which is now part of the system built in. We can set it by always in the view or in the camera. And they're planning to migrate the real-time compositor into the actual, so if I go into the camera view, like this, go into the compositing view, just camera. So if I, for example, use the lens distortion, let's just unhide it. If I turn on the dispersion, so it's like, or there we go. Make it super exaggerated like this. So in the full screen, you can see that we now have lens effects inside the actual viewport in the actual monitor here, which is kind of fun now. So this has become a real-time thing, and they're planning to convert a lot of the system into the compositor so that you can render and use the efficiency of the compositor in the future instead of the old architecture. So they're upgrading the base architecture of the actual compositor as well. So that's kind of nice. Another thing that we're going to take a look at is the brush assets. So right now, with the assets that we have built in and things like this, we cannot store brushes. So they're planning to upgrade the brush asset system. So that's going to be new and interesting. With that, they're also going to work on texture nodes and other texture workflows and performance things. They're also planning to upgrade animation module, but that's probably an ongoing project which will start this year. We're not sure what's going to happen there exactly, but we'll see what happens. The Grease Pencil team has big ambitions and plans, which I'm still not sure of what is happening, but that's also coming. And there's also another concept of Blender apps, which is changing the code to make it a bit easier. And in the back end, something very interesting. They're migrating to use Jatia or Gatia to create a better Git flow code system and harmony and tracking inside the Blender repository, making it much better. And also, we don't get it for 3.5 in the future, but in 3.6, hopefully, we get simulation nodes and geometry nodes, which means we get loops to some limited degree, and we can also do a whole bunch of very cool stuff with geometry nodes from that. So in Blender, that's a lot of cool things. And with Bforaritsts, our plans for this year is basically upgrading the default asset library to be complete, including node groups for the compositor and geometry nodes, and more shader nodes, but also more objects and dynamic things that you can use with for default and for free to give you a base system. And also, I'm thinking to also add some default brushes before the brush assets becomes a thing. We also are planning to finish the Grease Pencil brush panels, which means you're able to, like if I'm in the sculpt mode, and we have these brushes here, we have all these panels with all these brushes. The idea is to add these brushes and brush panels to a top level also within the Grease Pencil mode. So that's coming on. And continued maintenance and support for the merges from Blender. So those are the first two things that's coming in the year 2023. 2023. And I'm pretty excited about that. So Shmuel is saying it's looking good. Please is like he's happy about Vulkan. Welcome to the present day. I agree. And Vulkan is very powerful. The good thing about Vulkan is also it's very performant. So it also opens up doors to faster work. Liz has also mentioned that with loop nodes that might be coming, or simulation nodes, we can also focus on using L systems. Though I know someone here has tackled L systems before. So on a side note, as a summary for what's coming for this year, things that we probably should keep in mind as artists is competing software, the techniques that they're using, the technologies and the trends, and we'll see what's up. So first things first, I want to share Cascadeur. So Cascadeur is an animation software for full body mechanics. This is, they have been on the vanguard of auto posing systems and body mechanics and riggings for different types of controls. And the big tendency for this year, just like it was for last year over the past couple of months, is using machine learned technology and neural networks within everything. So Cascadeur is one of them. And it's loading very slowly, but I'll just copy and paste the link. But this is one software that has just released a free version, which means you can start playing with it. And they've also started to work with systems that poses with AI. So they use machine learnings to pose your hand, for example. So you pull a finger and you move it to a certain point, and the rest of the other fingers in the hand will dynamically pose around that finger. So you don't have to pose one finger, then the next finger, then the next finger, then the next finger, then pose the palm, and then pose the thumb to get a pose, or create a really complex rig or store different types of poses and animations. You can do it by just pulling one finger. And same thing with adding physics to your rigs. So if you really want to get into body mechanics type animation, I recommend Cascadeur. And on top of that, another trend that we might see this year is the ability of using animation with machine learning as a general concept. So if you guys have watched Avatar, The Way of the Water, this link here that I have added, they have also used machine learning in their facial rigging. So traditionally, you do facial rigs using a concept of base shapes, facial shapes, a very complex rig. Sometimes a cinematic rig with motion capture would have 900 different shapes that you'd all have to manage and control in your rig. But now with James Cameron and his team at Weta, they used a facial capture system with machine learning and actual muscles on the face to copy a person's expression and give them unlimited mobility. So with the unlimited mobility assisted by machine learning, it creates much more realistic and exact performances with motion capture. Another thing that has been studied on with machine learning that may come out this year is that EA has a new AI system for gaming animations, and NVIDIA has been doing the same thing. So let me just load those links up. So 2 Minute Papers has done 2 videos about this, where NVIDIA has been training AI to learn to walk, to fight, to run, to dance, to do different things, all dynamically, and now the robot has practically had 10 years experience learning how to walk. So it's a very interesting technique. I'll just throw that video into the chat as well. So that's a very cool concept that's coming on. This NVIDIA is not the only one doing this. EA is also doing this for game engines. There's also a couple of other parties who are doing this inside Unreal Engine and other areas. So eventually we're going to be seeing games and cinema with characters who dynamically react, walk, fight, move, run, and turn around thanks to pre-trained machine learned neural network technologies. So AI concerning games is going to be really interesting. It's going to increase the quality of animation and interactive immersiveness inside of these things. So that's really exciting for coming out this year. Another thing that we can see is that Rococo just recently released a free service to help you convert your videos, any videos, even a YouTube video, into motion capture data, which means you can you don't need to use a suit to get good motion capture to start working with your 3D characters. So that's another interesting thing. Yeah, and it's free. Can't believe it. So here's EA doing a similar thing using AI to train their movement and different things like this. So this is a trend. This is something that is happening, and you can see this happening everywhere. Lots of people getting into machine learning, lots of people getting into this concept. So it's exciting. Obviously, there has been a lot of artistic debate concerning text-to-image generation. But right now, I think in the year 2023, we're going to start to see a sense of acceptance. Typically, when you see something devastating, you go through the 5 stages of grief. So this year, we'll start to see, just recently over the past couple of months, we saw a lot of people in denial of the technology. A lot of people got angry. There was a protest in December in ArtStation about AI art. And then we start to...
The process is still going on, by the way.
It's still going on, exactly. But with that, eventually people start to bargain. They start to work with legislation, or they try to find new ways of using the tools and things like that. And a lot of some people have also confronted depression. It's another stage of grief. But from that, there comes an acceptance. So there is going to have to be, or there is a cultural shift of going through these 5 stages of grief. Some people have gone through it already and it's like, hey, cool, we can use it. Other people like, oh, no. But that's something that's happening this year. We'll probably finish those 5 stages of grief and we'll probably move on. From there, we'll also have some development with the current systems that are available. This includes new models without artist names, more applications using it, better integration, for example, into add-ons with Blender, faster performance, more democratic distributions and uses, and also more artists who specialize into using it in their workflows, which I'm starting to see on Twitter quite a bit. And in the future, we also you haven't heard it from me first, but there is music generation. There's also 3D generation starting. Video generation is starting. 3D assistance is starting. So for example, as I mentioned earlier, we're using machine learning to help you with motion capture, machine learning to help you with facial motion capture, machine learning to help with game animations and interactivity. We'll have 3D assistance better integrated, texture generation, hopefully UVs, hopefully rigging, and things like that. Little by little, some software will get better and better with better tools that will make life much more fun to create. Another thing that we'll also see is that machine learning will also possibly be included because ChatGPT 4 is coming out this year. ChatGPT 3 with a user interface was just released. Microsoft is currently investing huge amounts of money into the servers, and they're planning to integrate this type of system into their search engines by default and as a service, meaning big companies are putting a lot of money into these systems for digital assistance, digital conversation. Even some people are trying it out with therapy and other things like that. It's a brave new world. There'll be new economies, new things, and this year is just going to be accelerated. So that's something that's coming in this year. Also, there's the whole debate of legislation and ethics. Currently in England, they're debating if they should allow machine learning through data openly or freely, if it's considered fair use or not. Currently, they're voting that it is. So if England passes these laws, this means that machine learning data would be more open, allowing for a lot of things to progress. But obviously there's a lot of ethical debate about that, but that's going to continue throughout the year. Hopefully things will catch up. And what else have we got coming on? So machine learning and other things like that is coming on. In other industries, there'll be more automation. Technology is becoming greener as well. Obviously, energy is becoming an interesting debate concerning a social economy. So the latest graphics cards from Nvidia that are coming out are greener, more efficient. Same with hardware, and with that will be a continuing trend. Jobs in the metaverse. Yes, I know the metaverse is a concept that doesn't seem like it's real, but it does mean that there is more entertainment jobs or digital art jobs for companies who want to get into it. Traditionally, a company may not have a digital presence or a game presence or an online presence or social networking presence, but now they want in. They want to be part of the social community, and they want to be part of the gaming, virtual reality, or augmented reality community, which means they need content, and they need to entertain, and they need to connect with people. This means more work in 3D, more work in games, more work in web design, more work in social networking, just more work for everybody, because more industries want to get more into the world where it was mostly exclusively gaming, but now it's not. And also other things that we probably see as a trend this year is that because of the cryptocurrency crashes and things and different changes of geopolitics and stuff, NFTs, yes, or Web 3.0, and also the need of like the people debating copyright and things, will also see a possible cultural shift concerning where people want to go with the technology. Meaning, do we store our data on open servers, or do we store our data on blockchains? Do we make sure our data is not copyable and accessible by everyone, or should we get royalties when anybody accesses our image? Or should we find a better way to get royalties for the work that we do? Should we get more royalties for the time that we spend on social networks? Facebook is starting to roll out different ideas for that, the big guys. And also there's a lot of other new social networks that are open source, set up by the people. They're a lot smaller, but there's a big shift on how people are using social networks, how they want to use it, and why they want to use it. So we're seeing a lot more of that this year. And on to software again. Whew, there's so much going on. Unreal Engine is becoming a lot more of a tendency and a production standard, mainly because of their higher fidelity in their code. Their animation and rigging module is also becoming a motion builder replacement, which is also quite good. And also their new technology concerning Nanite is also opening doors to new types of things. So if you can get into Unreal Engine, you're opening up doors to not only working in games, but also working in cinema, television, live television, which also comes to a new topic, which is puppeteering. So there was a director, which is another video here, which I have, which I'll share. Yes, Please mentions, wasn't there something announced at Beacon that Blender is going to get a small group of people researching for future technology and the future Blender, including artificial intelligence or machine learning or something like that? Yes, I'm not sure where they're going to go with that though. Slink doesn't think NFTs will live much longer. All those money grab scams for NFTs have destroyed it practically. Which I think is good, because that's okay, but the artists are still around, and there are more artists who use it now than there has been ever. And there's a lot more social acceptance to it. So there's the pro and con. You will see what happens in 2023. It is now year 3 concerning that. So it's already reached past the threshold of something surviving. If it gets past 5 years, it's here to stay. So another thing that we got to keep in mind is puppeteering. So there is a Twitter user, which I highly recommend here. So here, whoops. Duke Gunston. So Duke Gunston has been using Unreal Engine with some controllers, and he's been working with some real-time puppets. So if you look inside his Twitter feed here, you can see that he has been creating a new world and a system of where you can control a character in real time. And he is not the only one. Another director who worked at Pixar and other people, including who work in Unity or who work in other areas, have been slowly but surely, even in Blender, using different types of controllers, MIDI controllers, Touch OSC, other things like this. We are seeing a re-emergence of real-time performances with art. Back in the day, we used to do this with puppets, with our hands, and we are returning to this, and we're just going to see more and more of this as time goes on, as the hardware progresses, as the high-fidelity real-time graphics progresses, and the controllers with virtual reality and sculpting and VR and things like this will also improve. Another thing that we're seeing as a trend is Mpr Renders, which Liz here was talking about earlier on in the server. We're just going to see more of this. The Pbr Rendering has hit a ceiling to some degree, which will continue to improve, but now it's more like a refinement. So now I'm exploring and branching out into new types of rendering techniques and new types of art and animated art coming out, which is going to be exciting because the new tools, the new tech, the new hardware, the new types of culture, the internet, the variety of the people, the variety of art that's coming out is just pushing cinema and pushing animation and television onto new types of experimental fields. So we're going to see a lot more interesting things coming on from independent artists or coming on from larger industries. For example, Sony with their trademark Spider-Verse film coming out, or other industries like Pixar exploring different types of techniques with their new types of animations, and other types of, and DreamWorks as well, pushing on. So the big guys, the small guys, and also the traditional. So stop motion is still coming on quite strong, and stronger than ever probably. And with that, 2023 is a rich year coming ahead, and those are the things that I have researched thus far. So also, on a side note, Houdini is becoming a lot more generalist, so it might be easier to learn now than it has been ever before, and it's a very powerful tool, many years ahead of the competition. Nuke.
Can you just become a subscription to
Nuke as well has also gone subscription. And yeah, I guess that's basically the general summary of what I have in mind for what's coming this year. So
what about Houdini changed?
They have an asset browser now. They have a modeling stack, and so when you model, it also does it in nodes, so you can model intuitively in a linear way but still keep it non-destructive. They're making the rigging also apply to new techniques of automatic posing, similar to what Cascadura is doing, and which makes life easier when it comes to animation. They still don't have a raster or GPU based render engine, but you can also connect. This has been here for a few years now, but Houdini and Unreal Engine are becoming kind of like bread and butter, because you can use Houdini directly with Unreal Engine using a spliced system, which is available for free. So it's kind of it's an interesting concept. Houdini is it's a power horse, and it's a few years ahead of the competition. Unreal Engine is also a productive visual power horse for real time as well, and it's the edge of the game. And both the Houdini connection to Unreal Engine and Unreal Engine is free. So we're just going to see more of that, more of those tools being used, more of it being used in the industry, more requirements to know it, to use it. This year
is more paid than Unreal is.
Yeah, it is, but the connection to Unreal Engine is free, so you can still work with that into Unreal Engine without it. And Unreal Engine, just for what it is being free, is to not learn it is a fool's errand.
Well, they do have like a way that they actually make money.
Yeah.
Using it is free, but let's say you want to make a game, they take like a percentage, which is quite good. It's not a bad percentage.
By law, no, in their terms and services, any linear content is royalty free, which means cinema, television series.
Okay.
So anything that renders to disk is free, royalty free. So you could create a feature film using Unreal Engine and not have to pay a single cent. if you ship the code, if you use any of the Unreal Engine code in your game, up to a certain point per quarter, you would be paying. But that's like a really high threshold.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and also like their game store is also giving Steam a good run for the money, because Steam's commissions, or the commission that you have to pay to sell on Steam, is double the commission from Unreal Engine. So the store,
Like 25 to 15.
pretty much. Yep.
Unreal is 15
And Steam's 25.
yeah, 25.
So that's it's competitive. So it's just, that's just some of the things that I've been keeping an eye on about this year. And Slinks is probably the market share is larger on Steam. Yeah, that's true. So there are many things like this, and those are the things I wanted to share. So with that, Shmuel, I think you know all of this, but I wanted to share with you some basic fundamentals that I've been learning with geometry nodes. And I guess we can call it a day. And if you're still here, I'm not sharing all the links everywhere. That's okay. So concerning, I like your idea about gobos in the library sleeves. I think that's a good idea. Gobos for Eevee would have to be with geometry though.
Make it like a geometry nodes modifier.
Yeah, exactly. You find that kind of sus. So
Actually, maybe in the new Eevee they might make nodes work
I hope so.
in lights. That would be quite good.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
I've also noticed, just a side point is with, like I've seen like in this past week on Aaron's help chat,
Mm-hmm.
it just came up that lights, when you instance lights, you can't use nodes, even in cycles.
Oh, really? Because they are
Yeah.
instanced. Gotcha.
Yeah, and you can't like just make them all go from the first thing. It's kind of interesting. I hope they work on that, but I don't think there's anything planned.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, the one thing that I do know is planned, and that's being code under review, is that Eevee would be able to render in 360. So that's kind of a technique that I'm looking forward to. And another thing that I'm doing a lot of research concerning geometry nodes. I've been digging deep inside of the ETK, your node pack, which is about curves. Taking a closer look at that. I'm looking
So far,
forward.
it's curves.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to your future updates. You're very complete.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm hoping, I gave myself till actually February, like to make like the next major update is going to be in a month. Not now, from when I first released it. I am working on documentation. I
Good.
didn't start yet, but I'm starting to set up an environment. I will start writing the markdown like this week, and then get the website up sometime later. Yeah.
Excellent.
So hopefully I'll be ahead of the game with the documentation.
As far as I know, you already are if you've already started.
I haven't started.
Well, you will
documenting
start. I'll hold your word to it. You'll be recorded live. Get your documentation done. This will be super important.
And hopefully all the nodes will be just as extensive as the curves.
Good.
I
Yeah.
even forgot to add some nodes, so there will be more curve nodes as well in the next
Oh,
release.
good. Good. Excellent for plants
And some
things.
nodes I didn't add yet because I first want to add the mesh nodes before I finish the curve nodes. Because there's overlap in the nodes.
Yeah, that's one thing I'd like to do, is work on a bit of documentation. On a personal note,
Also, if you want to suggest any other types of formatting, like I have a way of organizing them, but I'm not sure if it's the best way yet. So if you have any ideas on
possibly.
a way of setting it up.
I've been wanting to do
Like
some
right
good
now I have
documentation too. But my documentation's like this, where I have like a quick little small example of what's actually happening, so I understand what every node is doing.
I also plan on shipping demos eventually.
Oh, good.
And the major hardest things I think I'll ship with demos. Simple, the experimental L system I have. It's really only I put on. It's never going to be out of experimental, since I don't think they're going to give me stuff that I can fix it with. So saying it's limited, but it's actually, you can make pretty good trees. Just you can't alter the amount of splitting per iteration. So let's say you set it to 2 splits, it only can do 2 splits iteration. You can't make it 2, 1, and 3 the next iteration. That's like the only major limitation it has.
Right.
Yeah, and that you would not be able to figure out necessarily how to use it without the demo.
Yeah, that's something you need to see.
I set it up in a way that it's very customizable, but it's not built into the node. You have to use the second node that comes with it, and then just connect it. It's pretty simple, but you wouldn't necessarily be able to figure it out by yourself.
That's right.
So I'll probably ship a demo of that and maybe some other things.
Yeah, I would need to think about how to do this with Bforaritsts as well. And that's one of the big projects I really want to do this year. On a personal note, I'm moving in February, and I'm also purchasing a new computer, which means my internet speed is going to go up, my streaming performance is going to go up, and also I will be focusing exclusively on the Painterly, and any extra time will be focused on making some digital assets and these projects, some of them for free here in Bforaritsts, and other ones hopefully for the world. So my services is going to be changing this year, which means I'll be able to give more to you, hopefully. That's my plan. And with the geometry nodes, I've been doing the cross-reference of the document, which I was about to show you. Here it is. So I've been doing a cross-reference of all the packs, which nodes go to where, which pack has the most
really
nodes.
Motivates your whatever actually motivates me to make a better product.
Yeah, right now you have mostly
It's
curves.
like someone's actually looking at them, so I'm like, wow.
Yeah,
Probably like I want to be like the top because like, I don't know, competitive wise, you know what I mean?
yes, competition, it's always good.
No, just like not because I like want to compete. It's just like if it's like ranking them, I'm like maybe I want to be higher up on the ranking.
Yeah, so far your
Yeah.
pack is it requires a lot more nodes and categories. So for example, in utilities, I still don't have we don't have any utility nodes, no texture UV, no mesh primitives, no mesh editing, no curve
I
primitive.
only released.
You only did
there
curves,
should
yeah.
be some.
You got
yeah.
curve primitives and curve editing.
Yeah, I did everything just with curves so far.
Yeah.
I couldn't really. I don't want. If I release everything at once, it would take like another month or two. So.
Yeah, but keep growing because you got your organization is clear. It's quite good. But yeah, there's definitely some packs have some strengths and other packs have other strengths. Like ETK, like Arundel's, his strength is with his pack is concerning a lot of good geometry type based workflows and mapping and things like that. Lots of interesting, useful stuff, selection things. It's very powerful. But I find Node++ a lot more practical concerning its use. And Higsas from Blender Artist, his stuff, which is also free, has some really good to the point nodes, which are also very useful. Like mid-level nodes, quite good. So it's kind of interesting comparing these, but with that, I do plan to also make something good for Bforaritsts as a default. So we'll see. Maybe a lot more minimal though. And that requires understanding it. So I know you, Shmuel, you're an expert at this, but I wanted to ask someone else here. Have you guys had any good experience with geometry nodes before? Do you understand the foundations of how it works? Or what is it? If you have, blink twice. If you haven't, blink once.
Actually, no. I've tried to fiddle. I try to watch tutorials, but the concept just does not enter my mind.
Right, let's see if I can enter it into your mind, hopefully. So let's take a picture here. Whoa, I got too much chromatic aberration. So let's just turn that off. All right. So let's see, this is basically what I'm going to do. So imagine this icosphere right here is a vertex. So this is a point. If I have 2 points, I get an edge. So this here, this type of thing, so if I like create this cube here, and this cube is the edge. So these types of things that we use to create geometry, and if I do like a 3 points, 2 edges, and with that I get a face. So if I have this, like this concept here, so these types of things, or these pieces of Lego that we use to create 3D, are called domains, or things, a domain. And with that, these domains have their particular information. So for example, this point number 1, this could be point number 1, this is point number 2, this is point number 3, this is edge number 1, edge number 2, edge number 3, face number 1. And in this point, the point is over here to the right, this one's over here to the left, to the front, this is over here to the left but to the back in 3D space, and all of it is floating just a little bit to the top. So all of these things here are a domain. So now if we put them into a group, so for example, all of these 3 points are all the same material. So let's just color them red and copy the material to each other. All of these are in a group, and this group is kind of like this box. This box is red color. So this red color is what we call, and the properties of these points in this domain is what we call a field. So if we take a look into the nodes here and the basic setup that we have here, what I've done is I've created a cube. So we can see this cube here, and 1 by 1 by meter, and right this at this point, basically what we do with geometry nodes is these green lines means execute or run or pass the data from one end to the other, get the start and finish. At the end of the line, which is usually this node called the viewer node, or in the geometry node, which is this one here, geometry output. So this geometry output node, which is the output, is kind of like the finish, the execution. So start the execution, which is the beginning input, group input, and finish the execution at the end. And from there, the basics of this data is that we have the option of getting information, the position of a point, and setting the information. So if we take a look at this cube, and we take a look at the get position, it's telling us that this cube is at the center of the world. And if we get an add node, add vector, let's just do it through dragging off, and we plug that into the offset, what we can do is we can add any type of number to the, or we're going to do this, into the actual movement. So as you can see, I'm adding a number onto the domain, which is the points domain or the geometry domain of this particular cube, so that I can get the position, add information to that position data, and then I use the node set position to put it to a new place and then finish the execution at the end. So from left, create a cube, get the position of the points, add to that value, and then set the position of those points. Very similar to code, where you get data, process data, output data. Similar to storytelling. You get the info, you set the information, you get the information that you need for the story, you process the story, and then you set the conclusion of the story. You get the information you need. For example, here's another example down here below, where I take the position and I scale it by the index and I set the position. So if I click on this, if we take a closer look at the attributes inside of a viewer, here, wait, without the attributes, there we go. Okay, if we go into the camera view, we can see it a bit better and make this viewer scale bigger. So here we go. So if we take a look, we can see that every point on this mesh has a number. This is the index. So as I mentioned earlier, we had 3 dots over there. So in this case, we have dot number 1, dot number 2, dot number 3, and all of them have an index. And with that, I've used the concept of getting the original position. If we take a look here in the closer part, in the original position of the node, we get the position, and then we get the number. And then we use some math, which is a simple thing like scale, the scalar control. So we scale the position of these points by the number to set a new position. So when we take a look at the shape, the bigger numbers are further away from the center, and the smaller numbers are closer to the center. And the 0 number is at the center of the world. It hasn't moved anything at all. So here it moves 1 meter down, 1 meter out, 1 meter to the left and right, or front as well. And as you can see, everything kind of moves out like a spiral based on the index. So if you keep that in mind with geometry nodes, you can keep it nice and clear. Same thing with, for example, here with this displaced mesh. So this displaced mesh, what I do, if we take a closer look, we use this execution line. So he says it gets the grid, creates the grid, executes to a set position node, subdivides it, and sets the position again. Let's take a look at the information that we're getting. So these dotted lines, or these diamond shapes, the diamond shape tells us that this is a field. This is a group of data, And the dotted line with the single button means there is one value for all of them. Meanwhile, the solid one means each value has a unique value. Each one could have a unique value. So for example, if we take a look at these red dots again, here we go. So at the red dots, each red dot has a different value in the 3D space, but it may have the same value of scaling, which is this one here. So in this case, if we're using the same value, this could be a field with a dot, or we could have a unique value per piece on the solid line, I think it is, or vice versa. I could be wrong. Shmuel, correct me if I'm wrong.
Sorry, I was actually not focusing for this exact second.
Don't worry.
What did you say?
Don't worry. I was just trying to remember the dotted diamond means something and the solid diamond means another thing.
The diamond and solid. The diamond means it's a field.
Yes, which is a group.
Means it's static.
Okay.
A diamond means it's context based.
Yep.
All
right, so to understand this, let's take a closer look. So right now, I'm getting a random value. And I have a minimum, maximum, and a seed. And I spit out a solid field index based on the ID. So each individual item is going to have this random value. And then I'm going to put it into a vector and use this vector in the offset. And I'm going to do it twice. First time earlier. So if we take a closer look at this, at this mesh, we can see that the movement is got this random value on all of the points in the z-axis. And then I subdivide it again, and then I set a random point on the z-axis again, but on each individual point. So we have this noise divided by this, and on each different point, to create this kind of noisy displaced mesh every point. So this is how we use the idea of like, we get data, we run the data through different operators, which is the green line, which is the set, subdivide, set, and we get data and we process the data and reference it onto the different types of operations, which is useful. I guess this image here gives us an idea. We got the cube, and we're setting the cube, and the set position is getting data from the position index and is scaling it, what we mentioned earlier. It's kind of backwards, forwards moment. And here in this case here with the attribute data flow, you got to remember that this position, I get it once, but every time I use it inside the tree, it happens twice, which means it doubles over. So if we take a closer look at this cube, the first cube is where we got the position of each item here, right? And we scaled the position by the index of each point, which is the number of the points. So point 1, push by 1, point 2, push by 2. But if we do it again with the same attribute, it does it twice over, like it multiplies it over itself. So 1 is now 2, 2 is now 4, 4 is now 8. It's done it 2 times. It doubles over each other. So in this case, attribute data flow relationship is important to use how it works. So for example, in this example here, I've taken the position 1 time, and here's the cube, and I'm using the same concept of scaling by the index here, but instead of doing it twice over onto itself in the execution tree by the same value, so cube, execute again based on the same position, I want to execute the position 1 time, then execute it 1 more time. In this case, I have to freeze the attribute or capture the attribute, or in other words, set the attribute for later. So I take the position 1 time and I capture this attribute as a vector value inside the point domain, which is the type. And this will store this into a list. If you understand Python, a code, this means you practically take data from an array of information and you put it into a defined user list. And then you call the list of objects that you created from the array for later use in any other type of function or code. If we do it in more simple terms, imagine you're in a room and this room is a library of books. So you have a box. So the library of books is the domain, the field. The field, the domain with the different types of fields. So for example, you have a book of points. Book number 1 is point number 1, book number 2 is point number 2, and you have a whole bunch of books. And in this case, you want to take the box, and the room is where you're doing the action. For example, setting the position is the room. So you want to go from one room to another room without using copies of the books. So you use the capture attribute node to put the books into a box, and then you take the box and you move it from one room and then you move it to the other room, but it's the same collection of books. So the capture attribute node helps us to set the position 1 time and then set the position another time with the same box of books, which is the original position. So if we capture this node, we can take a look at the position up here in the top right. If we do this once, we can see that it's moved out predictably. We do this again, and everything is moved out by 1. So 1, 2. Nice and easy in comparison to squared over itself. So 1 additional, and this one is squared. Because I referenced the same box of books for the operation of moving the position. And that is the first foundation that we need to understand for geometry nodes to continue doing what we need to do. And with that, we can do other interesting things. So here's another good example. This example is where this is more complex. Well, not as complex, but basically what I'm doing is I'm taking a curve that I get a curve, an object from the outside of the world. I get the factor, the spline parameter, and I capture it. So I take the factor of the spline and I put it into a box in the execution so I can use it for later. Why? Because later on in time, I want to set the radius of the curve. So I get the radius and I set the radius. So that's I get the radius from the 3D view and I set it into the actual geometry nodes curve. And then from there, I remove the factor attribute because this domain is a curve domain. If I convert this mesh or this curve to a mesh, that means I delete the curve domain and it becomes a mesh. This means the information that I had in the room with the books. So the library with the books in the room that I used to have, because I convert it to a mesh, this room no longer has a library. It's a kitchen now. Why is it a kitchen? There are no books in the kitchen. So because there are no books in the kitchen, what happens if I still want to use the books? So I use the capture attribute node to get the box of books, which has the type of books, where are the books stored, and I can pass this data to another node. So in this case, I'm using a Arundel's displacement node as a purpose. So if I take a look from the beginning, here is my curve object right here. You can see it in the 3D viewport, this white line. Then I capture the attribute, and the attribute basically is the factor. So the one end of the curve is white, the other end of the curve is black. This is stored in the points. So I made a box with points with the values of the factor. So I captured the attribute. I made a box with books. Then I set the radius. So the radius in this case is by the viewport. Why can't I see it? Maybe I should use the output node instead. Okay, it seems like it has no radius at the moment. Okay, so then, there we go. So I set the curve radius. So in this case, I can't see it because there is no thickness on the curve. A curve is just a single line. It's like a vector. So in this case, I need to get a circle. So I create a circle and I turn it into a mesh, and lo and behold, we have a curve with the radius. So if I go into the 3D view, I go into edit mode, and I extrude it and I make it bigger. If I go back to the mesh, which I had earlier, and go back to the curve mesh, you can see that the radius of the curve is different. So let me just pin this, get the curve, move this around so I can see it a bit better. Rotate it. So now I'm getting the radius from the 3D view per point, and I'm using it to drive the radius of this mesh. So as you can see, the curve is no longer a curve anymore, but it is now something with a radius. So get the radius, set the radius, get a curved circle, loft it to make it into a mesh. That means I delete the box of books by accident, and then I use a displacement node to add this like rough displacement nice and easily for the purpose of this demonstration. But I need to get the box of books from when this was a curve. I need the information, which was the black and white information, which is over here, right? The black and white information from this curve. I need it now. I need it in this book over in this one. So to tell me that at the end, I don't want displacement when it's black, but I do want displacement when it's white. So this is where attributes is important, capturing an attribute and understanding where the information is and what is the information, how the information works, so that you can get data, process data, and set data based on an execution line, which is the green line. And you can get attributes. You can capture them to store them for later. You can process your attributes in any kind of way, and you can set the attributes or set the operation on different types of nodes for different types of things, for different types of mesh types, you know, like a volume cloud or a points, or for edges or faces or different things like that. And that is the fundamental concept that needs to be understood with geometry nodes to even begin, which took me a little while to understand because I was coming in from another software, coming in from other coding terminologies. It was not easy to understand, but now I do, and I wanted to share it with you. So that's it for today. Thank you, plebes. Thank you, Shmuel, for your updates and for your new year as well. Thank you, Slink, for your Among Us piece of art. And I hope you enjoyed my prognosis for 2023, the news coming up, the plans I want to do for Bforaritsts, and the things that are coming to Blender, and also the Tecker and other software. And I hope you also enjoyed this quick crash course of what the fundamentals are for geometry nodes. And with that, I will see you guys next week, Friday, same time, same place. This month we have a special technique, so next week we're going to be doing a little surprise. And I'll see you then.